Alright, here we go with a summary of Hamlet by William Shakespeare. It's kind of like Lion King, except everybody dies. Alright, just a quick character list to start us off, so we know who we're dealing with. We have the late King Hamlet, so he dies before the play even starts. He is married to Queen Gertrude, and they have a son, Hamlet Jr. After he dies, his wife marries his brother. He's evil. Alright, Hamlet's best friend is Horatio, but he also has a couple other friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Over here we have Polonius. He's the advisor to the king. He has two children, a daughter Ophelia and a son Laertes. Now this is all taking place in Denmark, but over in Norway we also have something going on with Prince Fortinbras, which will come into the story later. So the story starts out with a scene in a graveyard. The guards on duty see a ghost appear, and the ghost looks just like the late king. They bring in Horatio, who also sees the ghost and decides to tell Hamlet about it, since it seems like it's his dead father's ghost. Meanwhile, Queen Gertrude is begging Hamlet to stay a little bit longer instead of returning to university in Wittenberg, and he reluctantly agrees. Alright, then we have a scene with Polonius and his two children. Laertes can see that something's going on between Ophelia and Hamlet. They seem to be in a relationship and a bit of a couple. He warns Ophelia to stay away from Hamlet. They're of different classes, Hamlet might be taking advantage of her, there probably is no future there, just to be smart about it. Polonius is kind of an idiot. He gives Laertes a speech before Laertes takes off for France, which is the "To thine own self be true" famous speech, but it's all full of ironies and kind of hypocrisies, as it doesn't really make much sense. After Laertes takes off, Polonius forbids his daughter Ophelia from seeing Hamlet. Back to the graveyard, Hamlet goes to see what this ghost is all about, and sure enough, the ghost appears. This time it speaks before it was silent, and it tells Hamlet that he was actually murdered by his brother Claudius and did not die as peacefully and non-suspiciously as everyone thought. Ophelia notices that Hamlet's acting really weird. Of course, Hamlet doesn't really know how to take all of this, and so he's acting odd around everybody. So she tells her father Polonius, who in turn tells Claudius. Hamlet's friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, arrive, and Claudius asks them to do a little recon for him and just see what's going on with Hamlet and report back to him. They try to do that, but Hamlet can see right through it and is like, we're no longer friends, though he doesn't tell them that. Meanwhile, with everything else that's going on, Hamlet berates Ophelia. So before, where he was all lovey-dovey and writing her love notes, he now scolds her, yells at her, and tells her, "Get thee to a nunnery," which basically means no one will ever want to marry you, so you might as well be celibate for the rest of your life. Now, in regards to this whole ghost thing, Hamlet doesn't have a problem believing that it was a spirit, or believing in ghosts. That's kind of a superstitious age at the time. But what he does doubt is whether it was actually his father's ghost, or if it's just some malevolent spirit that's trying to mess up his life and make him ruin everything. So, what he decides to do is when a troupe of players comes through, so people who would put on plays for rich families and they would travel around, he says, "I'm going to write a play for you." And he has them reenact the murder scene that the ghost told him about. So as they're putting on this mousetrap play, he calls it, he's watching his uncle to see how he reacts, and he figures that way I'll be able to tell if the story the ghost told was true or not. So he has them reenact a man sleeping, and another man come and pour poison in his ear, and he dies. And he can tell from the way that Claudius reacts that it was in fact true. Claudius killed his own brother, Hamlet's father, and then married the widow, his sister-in-law. Hamlet thinks, perfect, I know he's guilty, I'm going to avenge my father's death, I'm going to go kill him. But he sees Claudius praying. He's like, well, I can't kill him while he's praying because then he'll go to heaven. He's probably asking for forgiveness. Little did he know, Claudius actually wasn't doing that. He was saying like, oh, I should be sorry and remorseful, but I'm not. So even if that logic worked, he should have just killed him. But then that would be a very short play. Instead, Hamlet goes to talk to his mom, and he yells at her for not really mourning for her husband's death and like jumping into a marriage with her brother-in-law. Polonius is behind a curtain listening to all of this, and as Hamlet's getting exceedingly more violent in his scoldings of his mother, she screams, and then he screams out for help. Hamlet thinks that this is his uncle and stabs him through the curtain, in effect killing his girlfriend's father. Claudius is like, yeah, it's time to go. So he tells Hamlet he has to leave and go to England. He sends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern along with Hamlet with a secret letter, which we'll come back to. Ophelia has gone crazy. So with Hamlet being how he is to her, and then her father dying, she's just kind of lost it, and she wanders around singing songs about flowers and such. Laertes has just returned from France and is furious with Claudius and is blaming Claudius for the death of his father. Claudius explains that it wasn't his fault, but it was actually Hamlet's. Surprisingly, we find out that Hamlet's back, and he did not go to England or make it to England. Then Gertrude comes in and tells that Ophelia is dead, that she drowned in a pond outside and killed herself. As Hamlet and his BFF, Horatio, are walking back towards the palace, they come to the graveyard and they see a gravedigger. They start having a casual chat with him, and this is where Hamlet gives his famous alas, poor Yorick speech. He doesn't know who the grave is being dug for, so it's all fun and carefree. Once he realizes as the funeral procession comes that it's for Ophelia, him and Laertes go at it and have a little scuffle in the grave, arguing about who loves her the most, which doesn't really honor her if you're doing that in her grave. Hamlet then explains to his best friend Horatio what all went down on their journey to England with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So he suspected something was off about that letter, and he opened it. And sure enough, Claudius had given them a letter, knowingly, they knew this too, to give to the King of England when they arrived there, with orders to execute Hamlet on the spot. So he read that, he swapped it for a different letter, saying that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern should be killed when they got there. So, they were killed. His ship was then apprehended by pirates. Yep, I don't know. And pirates bring him back to Denmark. Now, after Claudius was able to convince Laertes that it was actually Hamlet's fault that Polonius was dead and not his, he also convinces Laertes to engage in a fight with Hamlet to avenge his father's death. Hamlet doesn't know that Claudius and Laertes have decided to put poison on his foil. So all he has to do is scratch Hamlet, and Hamlet's a goner. But, of course, Claudius wants to be extremely thorough, so he also poisons wine that he has to, toast to Hamlet, hoping that he'll either drink it or get scratched, and he's gone and all his problems will be erased. Instead, as they're starting to engage in the duel, Gertrude drinks a toast to her son, effectively killing herself, though Claudius is the only one who realizes what's about to happen. Laertes does succeed in scratching Hamlet, but then in their scuffle, their foils get swapped, and Hamlet also scratches Laertes. Gertrude falls to the ground, saying that she's poisoned, and she dies. Laertes reveals to Hamlet what's going on and explains that Claudius is behind all of it. So, as he's dying from his poison wound, Hamlet stabs Claudius with the poison foil and forces him to drink the poison wine. Just all for good measure. So, Gertrude's dead. Laertes is dead. This is Gertrude. This is Laertes. Here we have King Claudius also dying, and Hamlet's dying. As Hamlet is dying, he's saying, Fortinbras, the Prince of Norway, who's been upset with us because my father killed his father, he can just have Denmark. Just let him have it. Horatio's the last one of our main cast alive. Sad that his best friend just died. Fortinbras enters, says that, Hamlet would have made a really good king, but he's there to take over. And that's the end.